So as they introduced me, I am a poet and author. My name is Sarah. And I'm so honored and privileged to be here today because I get a chance to share my story and the things that I've learned along the way. So I have a bit of a different spin on the place that we make. We've heard a lot today about community and spaces and housing, but when I think about the place that we make, I think of individuals. And in the famous words of Lauryn Hill, how are you gonna win when you ain't right within? So I want to take a bit of a look inside. Now, what I want to talk about today is a little bit in your face, but it was a lesson that I had to learn in order to progress, and that is, no one is coming to save you. Now, the reason why it's like bold and loud and on the screen like that is because this was a lesson that I had to learn so that I could let go of certain excuses that were holding me back. Now, if you're at the front, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but I have in small print, it literally says here, your life is 100% your responsibility. I made it small for a reason, because I feel like sometimes that's the bit that we forget. Like, ultimately, we know it, but we don't always act like we do. Yes, we can't control, obviously the family we're born into, or the area we're from, or maybe the level of education we received, but we can control how we choose to react to the things that happen to us in life. So, I want to show you guys some images. So, oh, that came out a bit pixelated, but it's all right. Automatically, we are drawn to this red being object, right? But I want to take your focus off of that red person, and I want to talk about what it's like when you are just like everyone else. You're just one of these people. How do you thrive there? When you don't necessarily stand out, or you don't seem like the special one who's chosen, and what happens when that audience gets bigger and bigger? So when I first had this image, I was automatically drawn to this man with orange paint on his face. But what if you aren't as easily seen as this man? What if you're this person who's just randomly in the crowd somewhere? And I really want you to know that you can still thrive, even if it seems like you're just part of the majority, and it doesn't seem like you've had this lucky break that you've been waiting for. And even when the crowd gets even bigger, now this picture alone gives me anxiety to look at. But I want to read to you this quote that says, "What I do isn't unique, I'm unique. And if more people had this perspective, they'll stop letting the everybody else is already doing it excuse kill their dreams." Now, I think that quote is self-explanatory, but it's something that really had to sit with me, that I could still thrive, even if it seemed that everyone else was doing what I wanted to do, even if I didn't necessarily seem chosen or had someone backing me or helping me. So my story. So for the most part, no one even knew that I was interested in poetry for a very, very long time. Now, I loved poetry from a young age. I fell in love with my year 10 anthology. I loved English. And in uni, I tried a little bit. But look, if you wasn't close to me, you would have no idea that this was one of my passions. But it was. I don't have a crazy backstory. I went to a normal school, went to college, university. I have a law degree. I ended up working in finance. So on the most part, I was following the blueprint of a child who came from a Nigerian home. And for a while, it was working. Everything seemed like it was falling into place. I was in a long-term relationship, I was engaged, I was about to get married, I had a good job, and all my things to do before 25 checklist was going according to plan, until it wasn't. And the reason why I'm choosing to be so open and transparent about my life is because I need you guys to understand where my poetry was birthed from. So when it wasn't going right, I felt like my world was spiraling. And I knew that my problems weren't uncommon. There were loads of people who were going through what I was going through. But I felt like I couldn't explain to anyone that I was incredibly sad. And at that time, I couldn't risk telling someone hey, this is how I'm feeling, because I felt like I was just the ultimate burden. And there's loads of people who feel that way. So in this time, I really turned to my words, and I would write all the time, I would read all the time. I was literally just in love with poetry, because I felt like there was no judgment. I could completely express myself. So, so after I was writing more, I started to feel a bit better, and I was literally using my poems as therapy. And it was literally my safe space. And I felt like as it was building, I felt like I had a thing. It was like I had a lot of content, these poems are coming together. And strangely enough, I thought to myself, you know what, this feels like something, so I'm gonna set up a focus group, because I needed feedback. I needed to know that it wasn't all in my head. So I got a bunch of people together, some people that I know, some people who I don't know as much, just to see if they felt anything, if this was something worth pursuing. So the feedback came, and it was really positive, and it really encouraged me to move forward. So now I've established that, yep, poetry is gonna be my thing. I realized that I'm in an industry that I know nothing about. I don't know about publishing, I'm new on the poetry scene, and I thought, how am I even gonna do this? But inside of me, I felt like I had a story that I wanted to share. So I started trying to do some research. I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. And I thought the only way I could get it done is if I had a traditional publishing house backing me. But the thing with traditional publishing houses is that, one, they don't accept, well, most of them don't accept unsolicited manuscripts, which is literally when you send it in and you don't have a book agent representing you. And at the time, I didn't have one, or even know how you even go about doing that sort of thing. And I didn't even look at self-publishing as an option because there was so much stigma attached to it. So I thought, right, this is the only way it's gonna happen for me. So I managed to find a publisher, actually, that was taking unsolicited manuscripts at the time, and I sent it off to them. But at this point, I have no idea if they're going to come back to me. So in the meantime, I started doing research from people who I felt were in the space that I wanted to be in. So I started following their stories, trying to understand how did they get ahead. And I realized that actually, a lot of them had either started off with self-publishing before collaborating with bigger publishers, or completely did it themselves. So then the publishers came back to me, and they were like, oh, this is a really engaging read. And I was shocked because I didn't have a novel, I had a collection of short poems. And so at this point, I've had this real, like, I think I've arrived moment, right? And then I opened the contract, and I'm like, this ain't it. And at that time, I was faced with a decision, because I felt like, yes, I can tell people, oh, you know what, I'm published by so-and-so, this is fantastic, but the actual contract itself wasn't good. From what they had offered me, it was someone who clearly didn't understand my vision. So I remember talking to a friend, and he said to me, have you tried believing in yourself? And I thought, what are you talking about? Like, of course I do. But what he really meant was, have you tried investing into yourself? Have you even tried? And I thought, you know what, you're right, I haven't. And actually looked at what they said in the contract, what they were going to be doing for me, and I thought, wait, I think these are things that I can maybe do for myself, or at least try to do for myself. And so I did just that. So there are 2 points in my story that I kind of want to hone in on, and it's the bit that I call the sweet spot. And it's when you hit rock bottom, or at least you think you've hit rock bottom, but then you realize that actually the only way is up from here, that every day isn't an awful day, and why don't I just try and live the life I've always wanted to? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You literally become fearless, and that's how I was a few years ago. Now, the next point I want to hone in on is the Saviour Complex, and that's just the idea that you need something outside of yourself to move forward. So for me, it was that I needed a publishing house, and that I could never do this by myself. And for other people, it could be loads of things. Maybe you're waiting for a particular contract to come through or funding to happen. But what I'm saying is that what happens if it doesn't come in? Do you just pack up shop and say, all right, I'm done? So those are the 2 points I kind of wanted to get in on. And I've got a nice cool quote for you that says, sometimes you can't wait for someone else to save you. You have to be the hero that saves yourself. So I thought, maybe I like the idea of being the hero of my own story. So now what? I don't want to be that person that comes here today and tells you, like, you know, no one's coming to save you and all this other stuff, and not give you tips or things that I've learned along the way that you can use in your lives. So my first few tips are work and squeeze. Now that is, work with what you have until you have more. Now for me, all I had at that time was my phone and my poems. So I turned to social media, started sharing my work online, and I was able to build a community of thousands and thousands of young people, mostly women of color, who also use poetry as therapy. And squeeze. Squeeze as much as you can out of that opportunity. The amazing thing for me anyway with sharing my work online is that people are always discovering you for the very first time. So for you, you might think, oh, I'm over this, I've spoken about this book so many times, but for someone else, they are just coming into contact with you. Now, you can always, the reason I say work with what you have is that you can always go back and improve and edit. And I use the example of, I have friends who tell me like, hey, Sarah, I want to start this YouTube channel. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's brave. And a few months go by and there's still no channel. And I'm like, what's happening? Oh, wait, I need to buy a new camera. So they save up for the camera. And then I'm like, all right. And they're like, no, I need to get a ring light. I need to get this, that, and the other. But the problem wasn't to do with the equipment or the camera. They could have used their phone. They could have used natural lighting. And the truth is that they could have edited what they had and improved along the way. You cannot improve on what you don't have. Anything times 0 is still 0. So I wanted to find a really cool acronym for this one, but I couldn't. So look, plan, ask, find, share. Plan, ask, find, share. Plan your journey. Now, we always hear the well-known phrase of, you don't have to see the whole staircase before you take the first step. But you can plan for that first step. Which leads me on to my next point about asking. Ask questions. You cannot afford to be in the dark when it comes to what you want to do. So for me, when I wanted to know, I started stalking people on social media who were doing what I wanted to do. I'd go onto their websites. Usually when you go onto their websites, they actually have like FAQs where they, explain what they did. I started asking people who I know, who have friends who have published, because I didn't want to be in the dark about this. I get emails and direct messages all the time from aspiring writers, poets, who are like, oh, how can I move forward, or what did you do? And I try my best to answer, because I know what it's like when you're completely in the dark, and no one wants to be transparent because everyone wants this facade of, I'm so successful, so they don't want to show you what they did. But I like to tell people because I feel like we all need to share those ideas. Now, find. I hope that you've taken quite a bit from what I've said today, but I need to really hone in on this point, and that's find your audience. In today's day and age, whether it be online or in real life or whatever, we always think that what's most popular is what's most successful, but it's about finding your specific audience. It's about alignment as opposed to attention. What is the point of having like millions of followers if they don't care about what you are doing? It's about finding the people who actually will invest into your product, who care about what you're doing, who are going to go on a journey with you. And lastly, share. Don't be afraid to share your dreams. I know that sometimes when something's so special to us, we can like hold it really close to our chest. And that's why for a long time, I didn't even tell anyone that I was really into poetry. But I wish I started earlier. I wish I was able to tell people like, hey, this is what I'm doing, because there are so many opportunities that are available to you once people know that this is what you're trying to do. So yeah, plan, arts, find, share. And my last tip is consistency and quality. Now, when I first put these slides together, I was talking more in relation to building an online platform. But this is just like in life in general. You need both of them, and this is the hard bit. It's harder than you think it is, but you need consistency and quality. You can't have one without the other if you really want to give it like a real chance. If you are consistent, but you have no quality, it means you're always going to have an average product. And if you have quality without consistency, it means your audience is forever disappointed because they're always waiting for you to do something else, and you're always not delivering for them. So yeah, consistency and quality. It's grueling, it's not always easy, but that's how you stand out, that's how you have longevity. So I've spoken a lot today, and I'm really glad that I've had this opportunity, but I just want to say as I close, that it's okay to bet on yourself, it's okay to put your eggs in your own basket, and understand that all the contributions that you make matter, and you can actually make a place for yourself, even if no one is helping you. And I don't want you guys to leave here today to think that I'm saying, oh, you can't have assistance or you can't get help. I just want you guys to know that even if you don't get the help, you're still going to be okay. And that you can believe in yourself until everyone else jumps on board that train. So thank you.